Wednesday, April 29th. Good afternoon. You're tuned to KNX 1070 News Radio.
When I came to work that day at approximately 2 in the afternoon.
76 degrees in Hollywood right now. It's going down to 63 at the LA Civic Center. 60.
I found a sergeant in charge, and I spoke with him and find out whether or not he was going to hold day watch over.
On the 57 southbound there at Chapman, a minor injury crash. They're working on
whether or not he made any provisions to obtain additional radios or vehicles or any such things for the events that could potentially unfold during the evening. There were none.
There was definitely a plan in the Los Angeles Police Department as far as dealing with this type of eventuality.
Stock market is up 23 points to 33.30.
We had some roll call trainings and some trainings in some tactical situations regarding riots, but according to our brass, they didn't expect anything to happen, anything like what happened.
KFWB News Time, 2:43.
The jury deliberating the King beating case as it has now reached verdicts on all but one count.
Just before they read the verdict, I had butterflies in my stomach, just wondering what it was going to be.
We were walking our foot feet, Dan and I, and Jesse is one of the shop owners there, and we stopped in there because we knew we could watch the verdict as it came down.
Judge Weisberg had given Los Angeles authorities 2 hours' notice before the verdicts were announced.
At the courthouse in the Simi Valley, John has been covering the trial from the outset.
I see Judge Stanley Weisberg on the bench. Let's cut to the courtroom right now.
We, the jury, in the above entitled action, find the defendant, Lawrence M. Powell, not guilty of the crime of assault by Timothy E. Wynn, not guilty of the crime of...
This was quite America on trial. This was a modern-day lynching. How in God's name could a verdict come back? All these verdicts of not guilty.
You're innocent, man. You're innocent.
Lieutenant Mike Mula and his officers of the 77th Street Police Station would be on the front line when trouble broke out later at Florence and Normandy Streets.
The number one thing that concerned me during the evening, and I told the roll call, is that there was no plan that I knew of. I had never seen a plan, and that this was one of the very first days in my 20 years of coming to the police department that I was significantly concerned about my safety and the safety of my officers and the policing of the community before I ever came to work.
Now, Eyewitness News at 4.
Good afternoon. A lot of people right now are saying it is a shocking development in the Simi Valley. Not guilty. That's what the Los Angeles police officers accused of Rodney King heard just within the hour.
An hour after the verdict, one of the defendants, Sergeant Stacy Kuhn, leaves the courtroom. Lawyers had held their clients back, waiting for the crowd outside to disperse.
I was stunned, shocked. I could simply not believe it. And there's no way that jury can ever convince me of what happened. It didn't make sense. I saw it with my own eyes, and they were telling us with that verdict. We didn't see what we knew we had seen on television.
But in conveying his shared sense of outrage to the community, Mayor Bradley, in the eyes of many police commanders, contributes to the problem.
That in itself inflames the attitudes of the citizens of Los Angeles. That we did not account for. And I guarantee you, from my perspective, that had an impetus into this entire set of circumstances. No question about it.
All these brothers here and everybody in the whole community has experienced and witnessed a total injustice today, and we're not going for it. We're not going for it. We're going to the street.
The Metropolitan Division, the police department's specialists in riot control and civil disorder, had conducted more than 60 hours in extra training preparing for this day. But most officers of the Metro Division weren't scheduled to report until that evening. Someone in command had decided that riots don't begin in daytime. More than $1 million had also been set aside for police overtime. But during the afternoon that the verdicts were announced, only a few officers were kept beyond their regular shift.
After the verdict, hundreds of officers are allowed to go home at the end of their regular shifts, indicating that there's no expectation of widespread trouble.
Next couple of hours saw a real rise in the tensions on the street. We started getting a lot of hard looks, a lot of comments. You could feel it. You really could feel it in the air.
Hey, man, it's up in there. Anything can happen now.
Yeah, get it going! Get it going! Yeah!
The Los Angeles Police chronology places the first indication of trouble at 4:30. A crime call came in from a local liquor store. A gang member's account fits strikingly with the police record and with the recollections of a news photographer.
From my understanding, people went to the store and just decided that they weren't going to pay for what they were getting. They were stopped at the door, and at that point, Mr. Lee's son was hit in the head with a bottle of beer.
Over our radio, we heard a unit put out a help call or an assistance call at Florence and Normandy, and that's when Chris and I first drove through that area.
I guess Mr. Lee, who was sitting behind the counter, pushed his little panic button or whatever you want to call it, and that brought the police there in a hurry.
4 police cars went by me, 60 miles an hour, code 3. Lights and sirens. I said, now this looks a little more serious. I said, I better follow them.
About 4:30, 5 o'clock, we had heard that the gang of police out there on the corner. And when we came out from the back, we had saw them chasing one of our little homies.
Photographer Bart Bartholomew was documenting what would later prove to be the genesis of the riots.
I went through the crowd and got to police officers who were effecting an arrest. And the crowd was yelling at the officers and actually tried to wrestle the suspect from the police. If there were 30 officers there, I'll bet there were 150 people there. I tried to maintain a level, a coolness and a control that would at least allow me to keep shooting. I think you'll see in the second picture that his hands finally wound up behind him in handcuffs, and he was completely under arrest. This was the time when he was thrown up against the side of the car. I realized moment by moment that what was building here was going to boil over.
At the time the officers were attempting to maintain some type of a skirmish line, they were being, of course, pelted with rocks and bottles and everything.
As the rage in the crowd grew, the level of tension rose. Someone right behind me, as close as shoulder contact to me, said, "Cop's going to die tonight." And I heard another voice over on this side and said, "It's Uzi time."
I looked at the situation and I made a determination in agreement with the supervisor on scene that it wasn't worth it.
An officer went down the police line. He patted everybody on the back and said, "We're out of here, we're out of here, get ready to move."
The order to clear the area is given at about 5:45.
One officer is already in his car on the driver's side, and a second officer, his partner, is entering the shotgun side of the car. On the right-hand side, we see a female officer running back towards her unit, and it clearly shows the retreat in motion. The crowd was very empowered by this. It was clearly a victory for them.
Even as the situation at Florence and Normandy is about to get totally out of control, we need to step back for a moment to freeze the action. This city, you need to know, resembles nothing quite so much as a dysfunctional family. Over the past 14 months, the LA Police Department has lost 2 of its 3 assistant chiefs. The one who stayed on, technically the second highest ranking officer in the department, is barely on speaking terms with the chief. Chief Gates and Mayor Bradley don't talk at all. Indeed, on that Wednesday afternoon, just as things are about to get out of hand, the chief and the mayor make separate live appearances on television. They have yet to communicate with one another.
They hate each other. Daryl Gates thinks the mayor is sneaky. He has used those terms. Tom Bradley just wants Gates out. He thinks he's a bully. He never wanted him in the first place.
I know that we must express our profound outrage, our anger, but we must do so in ways that bring honor to ourselves and our communities. We must not bury the gains we have made in the rubble created by destructive behavior.
If we have civil disturbances, we are prepared to deal with that. And I'm not going to go into any detail. Our job is to maintain peace and order on the streets.
When I see the mayor of the city of Los Angeles, Tom Bradley, who does not talk to the chief of police for over 12 months, who's running the city?
At 5:45 that Wednesday afternoon, one corner of the city at Florence and Normandy is about to be run by a mob.
When the crowd had seen the police retreat, they had no one upon whom to focus their rage, and it turned to me. Somebody turned to me and said, "Get his film, get his film." Someone in the crowd helped me. He just felt like a middle linebacker on my right flank. And he said, "I've got to get you to your car. Where's your car? You've got to get out of here." Someone jumped on the hood, started kicking the windshield. Big crack came across the front of the windshield. Then the doors flung open, and my cameras just disappeared. They just looted my car.
Bartholomew is struck in the face by a rock, but still manages to drive off. It's only when he looks into the rear-view mirror that he realizes the damage.
It looked like a pineapple on the side of my face. It scared me into a belief that, hey, I might be really injured here. I better get some help.
A few blocks away, Bartholomew is able to catch up with the police, who are regrouping under the command of Lieutenant Mullah.
I could see that the poor man had damn near been beaten unconscious. He had a contusion or something on the side of his face that was as big as a grapefruit.
And Mulan looked at me and said, "Yes, you do need a doctor." He said, "And I'm going to get you one, and you sit down right here."
I told him I would not leave the area, that I did not take him in his car with me.
I realized that there was still a roll of film in the car.
And he says, "If I go unconscious, I want you to make sure the New York Times gets these." And I said, "I will."
I didn't realize this until after it had happened, even maybe a day later, that the position in which I put myself really became ground zero. It was the flashpoint.
I met with Captain Jefferson for I believe this is the 4th time now. And I told him real bluntly that the riots have started. I truly believe that this is the beginning of the riots, and that the intersection at Florence and Normandy, we had lost both north and south, east or west, that we did not presently have enough people deployed to safely accomplish taking that intersection back in any way, shape, or form.
It is just about 6 o'clock. Tom Bradley and Daryl Gates have yet to talk. Indeed, the police chief is getting ready to leave his headquarters at Parker Center to attend a political fundraiser.
KSWB News Time, 6:02.
Less than 20 minutes have passed since the police withdrawal from Florence and Normandy, but the increase in violence is dramatic.
We're having one store that apparently is being looted at this time. This may be the flashpoint of the unrest that people were talking about.
Everything is pretty. Everything is pretty.
I've seen at least 20 to 30 young people throwing rocks. You can hear them impacting against cars and against trucks. I haven't seen any police officers coming here, only policemen.
In America now for the blacks.
The scene has really gone crazy out here right now.
I've taken about 7 hits from bricks, bottles, and other debris in the last 45 seconds. The phrase that some people said is quite accurate. If you're white, you don't belong here tonight. Get out of here as fast as you can. Save yourself.
Officers Lisa Phillips and Dan Nee, who had been ordered out of the area, monitor a radio message. A woman is trapped in her car, unconscious.
Dan and I looked at each other and said, let's go. We have to go. We can't leave this woman in her car getting killed.
And we saw probably about 30 people around the car, just pummeling the vehicle with sticks and rocks, bottles.
We devised a plan that Dan would go to the vehicle and try and get the woman out, and I would try and fend off the crowd as best I could. I had my gun out, and I was sort of doing circles around Dan and around our vehicle.
Well, I knew Lisa would be watching my back, so I just turned my back in the crowd and picked her up. We got back in the car. We were just being pummeled. It felt like rain on the roof. It was just a constant drumming of rocks and bottles hitting the car. And the rear window blew out, showering everybody with glass. And we got out of there.
At 6:18, officers of the 77th Police Station are ordered to regroup some 2 miles away at a bus depot, which has been designated as their temporary command center. Across town, police headquarters at Parker Center is under a ragged sort of siege. Hundreds of protesters whose only mission appears to be taunting the police.
At that point, the police throw up a barricade. They stop the protesters about 20 feet out from the main doors of Parker Center. They stop them. And they're trying to hold them back. They're trying to inch them back to the curb. It's just this back and forth. This giant game of chicken between the cops and the protesters.
Stanley Scheinbaum, the president of the police commission, had just arrived at police headquarters. At the rear garage exit, he had passed Chief of Police Gates, who was leaving the center.
I ran into the chief, and he was getting into a car. There was I going down there to find out what was going on. And I asked him where he was going, somewhat surprised that he was leaving, although he could have been going to some command post out in the field for all I knew. And he didn't answer my question. He made some remark about I have something to do.
I didn't believe it when I heard it. I didn't believe it. I thought that he was someplace taking charge someplace. So, yes, it was a shock to me to find that he was at a fundraiser.
It's 6:30. The protest at police headquarters is turning violent. Chief Gates has left Parker Center on his way to Brentwood, where he'll attend a political fundraiser to fight Proposition F, legislation which would give the mayor more power over the police chief.
Why on that Wednesday afternoon, early evening, about 6:30, just as things looked as though they were beginning to get a little bit out of hand, was it so important for you to go after that fundraiser?
Potato was not important, but let me just say that we had not received in my office any reports of anything serious that we did not believe we could not handle. We'd already set up our emergency operations center. That was an operation. I'd appointed field commanders. Everything was in operation. We believed our deployment was good. I felt very comfortable in what was taking place at that particular time. But to answer your question very directly, there is no good reason for my attending that group.
I don't know. I don't know who was running the show. And I don't think anyone can tell you who was running the show. The show was kind of just running itself.
It's 6:43 at Florence and Normandy.
I seen a guy off like the southwest corner there jumping on two cars. And I realized something was wrong, so I tried to get out of the way, but it was too late. I really don't know what I was thinking. I just wanted to get out of there, but every time I tried to get up, they would knock me back down.
Above the intersection of Florence and Normandy streets, television helicopters are feeding live pictures out to the whole country. The nation is wired to that intersection and to what is about to happen.
And there's no police presence down here. They will not enter the area. This is attempted murder. Tell LAPD to shut Florence Boulevard down and Normandy.
UPI reporter Bob Brill phones in a live report on the Reginald Denny beating.
The man is up now. His clothes are torn. He's still bleeding all over the place. He's trying to get back into his truck. He is getting back into his truck. He's trying to get out, trying to drive through this intersection now. I hope he has enough power to, on his own, to just get out of the area. I'm a news reporter.
But then, abruptly, Brill himself comes under attack.
Something. Can't tell. Oh, God! No! No, no, no!
Whoever it was then started kicking me in the face and stomping on my head. Probably about, I don't remember any more than a half dozen blows. I don't remember exactly how many there were, but it seemed like about that many. All the time they were saying, get the hell out of here. We want you out of here.
Tens of millions of people across the country are mesmerized by what is happening in and around that crossroad of South Central Los Angeles. It is television at its most riveting and horrifying. But live TV also becomes the carrier of a virus. At one and the same time, television conveys the fever of street violence and the impotence of the police. The beatings, the looting, the arson spread. Ironically, during these critical moments, television does not reach Mayor Bradley, who was at the First AME Church, or Chief Gates, who was en route to that fundraiser, or 12 of the department's 18 police captains who were racing back from a training seminar in Ventura, some 65 miles away. Nor is there a television at that municipal bus depot, which is now the temporary command center for the officers of the 77th Street Police Station. No TV and very limited communications. The phones are locked and can only be used to accept incoming calls. Chief Gates will later focus on that scene as an isolated and brief aberration.
All of our 77th Street units were pulled out of the field, taken to a command post at 54th and Van Ness, and then not released, redeployed into the field. And that occurred at 6:16. That's when they were ordered there. So from that period till about 6:51, we did not put any units in the 77th Street area. That's a mistake. And why that mistake took place, I have not yet obtained a good answer.
Officers on the scene, though, recall a breakdown that seemed to extend far up the command structure and well beyond 35 minutes.
The actual police officers and field supervisors had no clue what we were doing. We were just waiting for instructions, and we weren't getting the instructions. And so we just continued to wait, and it wasn't until two and a half hours later until we got instructions what to do.
But we just sat and we sat and we sat, and in the meantime, we were hearing radio calls coming out, boom, 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 of major trouble. People getting beaten, people getting robbed, buildings burning, looting. I mean, it was just crazy.
It was just frustrating for us to sit there, and we could see fires going along all around us, and we were listening to the radio, and we could hear, you know, Florence and Normandy any time the police are going to show up, but we were told not to respond.
Why wasn't there a list of priorities that could have been foreseen? Why wasn't there a plan to save the economic heart of our division? Why wasn't there a plan to go to the surplus stores where the guns and ammunition are? There was nothing. If there was a plan, it wasn't put into effect.
With no real police presence in the street, individual citizens throw themselves in harm's way to protect complete strangers. The Reverend Benny Newton sees truck driver Fidel Lopez being beaten. Home video cameras are rolling.
They were attacking anybody that wasn't black.
He ran across the street, and they caught him. And when they caught him, they began to kick him and hit him and beat him with sticks. And all along I was trying to stop them, and they would not stop. And he groaned and rolled over, and he literally stopped breathing. And at that time when I saw that, I threw my body across him to protect him from hitting him anymore. I says, no more, this is enough. You're going to have to kill me too.
Fui una persona de las... Pienso que...
I was one of the innocent people who arrived at the wrong place at the wrong time when people were angry, furious, ready to kill. I saw the pastor and I said, please don't leave me. And he listened. He didn't leave me.
Raul Aguilar was attacked while he pushed his broken-down van along Florence Avenue. Watching from their front porch were James and Barbara Henry.
The guy with the crowbar went in front, broke his front mirror out, and the other guy took the pole before he could even see him or anything and just hit him on the back of the head, and he went down.
At about that time, a car came by and ran over his leg. So I knew I had to get him to the side before he got hit again. I just didn't want to see him die, you know.
When he visited me, and I saw him, because I knew what he has done for me, and I was still in the bed. So when he came, I hugged his arm. I love him.
Police, still unable to drive through the intersection of Florence and Normandy, decide to dispatch a helicopter to assess the area. Officers had heard that motorists were being beaten.
When things go wrong, they go wrong in numbers. The initial helicopter had a mechanical problem and had to sit down in an emergency location, which now presented us with another problem, and that was the security and safety of the helicopter and the officers on board.
While leaders at the command post struggle to close off the area, a second helicopter is dispatched to survey the intersection. Apparently, it arrives during a lull. The pilot reports back that the intersection is quiet. The quiet does not last. Just after 7, a deputy chief tells an aide to Mayor Bradley, it's getting ugly. We may need the National Guard. The violence has moved and spread and grown. It's after dark, and things are getting ugly at Parker Center, police headquarters.
No justice, no peace! No justice, no peace!
What it seemed like is that, like, for the first several hours, like, no one was in charge. I think the mayor thought, because he is African American, that there would never be a race riot here again, that he would be able to control it. Gates thought that his police could handle any situation. Turned out they were both wrong.
Wrong and still out of position. So it falls to Deputy Chief Ron Frankel to order full mobilization. That happens at 8:10. Every officer in the department is ordered to report to duty, but in many respects, it is simply too late. The process will take several hours. Many of the officers are not home. Others live far away, and when they do finally report in, there aren't enough vehicles to get them to their assignments.
We're riding 4 deep in a car. Once we get assigned cars, and we're borrowing, just dual-purpose cars that don't have any lights or anything on them. We're borrowing those and just getting everybody basically to the command post, which is at 54th and Arlington.
Just getting to the command center was difficult enough.
Lights and sirens everywhere, people everywhere running, buildings on fire everywhere, and you can hardly see for the smoke, and choking and coughing on the way to the command post because of the smoke, and everything is burning.
Meanwhile, the situation at Florence and Normandy remains out of control. It is about this time, shortly after 8:30, that Police Chief Gates finally arrives at the Emergency Operations Center at City Hall, where he's briefed by his staff. Nearby, the crowd at Parker Center has been growing, preventing police from moving out to other areas of unrest. Tired of the standoff, the protesters turned to vandalism. The crowd begins to fan out, leaving a wave of destruction in its wake as it moves to nearby city buildings. The mayor and the chief still have not spoken. At 8:45, Mayor Bradley, who can see what is happening outside City Hall, calls Governor Pete Wilson and requests help from the National Guard. Technically, legally, the mayor is within his rights making the request, but normally such a request would only come after consultation with the chief of police. What might have been controllable a few hours ago is now exploding into sheer anarchy. Under cover of darkness, the rioters have turned to arson. Building after building goes up in flames.
Western engage OCD. You've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 fires burning.
A special plan had been worked out in advance between the fire department and the police department. In the case of civil disorder, fire trucks would have police escorts. That plan falls apart.
OCD from engine 14 at 51st and Avalon. We need PD here. Firemen need help. We're working on PD and we cannot get any PD for you. We have an injured fireman and we still have no PD at Adams and Hobart. Light Force 50 needs help. We've got shots fired. Light Force 50, Roger. We're working on PD right now for you. If it gets bad, just pull out.
I now have fire chiefs that are running around literally infuriated, yelling and screaming that they can't get to the fires, they can't get to the calls because they don't have police escorts.
OCD from Test, Light Force 35, 31st and Western. We have a fireman shot. We need help immediately.
We were on Vermont Boulevard there, and it's kind of like on Beirut Avenue.
Fire Captain Carl Butler turned from the fire at one point to face a gang member pointing an AK-47 at his head.
He's a madman. This is his night. I remember his eyes. I remember the muzzle of the assault rifle that he had. I kept expecting that gun to go off. It was, if he killed me, he was going to kill my crew.
Having gone in without a police escort, they decided to abandon their truck.
We went into a Latino household and kind of forced our way in, but anyway, we barricaded ourselves in there for about 45 minutes until the SWAT team came and rescued us.
What surprises many is how the zone of fire and destruction spreads throughout Los Angeles, to Hollywood, and other more affluent areas.
So now you have a situation where you don't have a singular flashpoint, you have multiple flashpoints that are occurring all over, and they're occurring almost simultaneously.
Communication, any kind of communication, is at a premium that night. It is almost impossible to get through to any law enforcement agency. The 911 emergency phone lines are clogged to the point of paralysis.
Communications was horrible that night. You couldn't call your next door neighbor. It was very difficult to get through to 911 or any other agency.
The dominoes are starting to fall. Lack of communication at the top, clogged communication throughout the system. Street violence, looting, arson. Finally, at 10 p.m., top city officials are brought together on a conference call, initiated by the governor, Pete Wilson. He, Mayor Bradley, Los Angeles County Sheriff Sherman Block, and Chief Gates, among others, review the need for sending in the National Guard. It is the governor's recollection that the law enforcement representatives on the call, Chief Gates and Sherman Block, initially expressed some skepticism about the need for the National Guard. By the end of the call, as Mayor Bradley remembers it, that skepticism had been resolved.
When the governor asked, how many troops do you need?
I said 2,000. The chief was silent. He didn't say anything.
Around 11 p.m., 8 hours after the verdict, some sort of unified response becomes discernible.
We believe that the situation is now simmering down, pretty much under control, and the governor has assisted us with a declaration of emergency so that in the event further assistance is needed, it will be able to respond very quickly.
We have made available some 2,000 National Guardsmen. They are on standby, prepared to move.
At 12:15, Mayor Bradley signs an order putting the city under curfew. The National Guard is dispatched to Los Angeles, but they will not be deployed on the streets until Thursday afternoon. Looters are now being arrested. Throughout the early hours of the riot, police had been inhibited about arresting suspects. No transportation, no place to process them, no place to keep them. That's changing. And Chief Gates is on the street again. He is guardedly optimistic. Even that, it turns out, is premature.
We're, I think, slowly getting in control. As you can see, we're out in force, and the officers are beginning to make arrests more and more, and I think we will begin to impress upon the people in this area that we mean business, that this has got to stop, and so I believe that we'll bring it under control in not too distant future.
It's real simple. White folk, we tired of this. We ain't taking it no more. It ain't over till we say it's over.
The man is right. It's not over. Not by a long shot.
Good morning, everyone. After a night of incredible devastation and destruction and loss of life, Los Angeles is trying to figure out what happened overnight in the wake of the Rodney King beating verdicts.
Thursday morning, Los Angeles wakes up to find that it's not over. Police are out in force at Florence and Normandy, but violence has moved beyond the epicenter of the riot. What no one expected was that the rioting would continue during daylight hours. In fact, it gets worse. The fires continue, and the city seems to explode in an orgy of looting.
I've been taking pictures of all this. This is exciting. It's wrong, but it's exciting. We browsed past some people here for a minute, and they took off and just total mayhem. Everybody's getting what they can get, and they go on, they come back. I got pictures of people going back and forth 2 or 3 times. I'm telling you, it's amazing. Let me get this shot here.
I can't stand this. To see our community go down like this. I've tried to educate myself and educate my children so that they would not have to live and go through this. And then I have to look at this and then watch these people teach their children to go into stores and take things and steal. I'm ashamed of my own people.
The police are reduced, for the most part, to standing by and watching.
They knew we weren't shooting them. They knew we weren't arresting them because they didn't see anyone going to jail. So they just ran at will, at free will, doing what they wanted to do. We were temporary inconvenienced and nothing more. We did not have the resources. We did not have the transportation. We did not have the personnel to arrest hundreds, and I mean hundreds, of violators. And I'm talking about men, women, and children. I'm not talking about black, Hispanic. I'm talking about criminals that make up black, Hispanic, white, and everything else under the sun.
Most of the 2,000 National Guardsmen are deployed at armories throughout Los Angeles by the wee hours of Thursday morning. But with all the looting and arson that's sweeping the city, there's not a guardsman to be seen on the streets. Hundreds upon hundreds of Korean-owned businesses are first looted, then torched. Among the most memorable pictures of the day, 2 Korean businessmen doing for themselves what neither police nor National Guard are on hand to do. 2 o'clock Thursday afternoon. An angry Governor Wilson gets on the phone with the commander of the National Guard, Major General Robert Thrasher. The local commander, another general, is also on the line. Why, the governor wants to know, are the Guard not on the streets? There isn't enough ammunition to go around, he's told. Also, there are some plates missing that modify the M16 from an automatic to a semi-automatic weapon. Governor Wilson suggests with some irritation that each man be given 1 bullet. That, he points out, will make the question of an automatic or semi-automatic M16 academic. As for the rest of the ammunition, he says, give it to the squad leaders. Have them allocate it as needed. You heard him, says General Thrasher to his subordinate general. You've got your marching orders. Get them out. And so, finally, around mid-Thursday afternoon, 24 hours after the verdict, the National Guard is deployed in the streets of Los Angeles. There's a familiar dissonance to it. U.S. troops patrolling the neighborhoods of an American city as though they were on a foreign mission. If their presence alone is intended to restore tranquility, it's not enough. The disorder, the chaos, the open lawlessness extend well beyond Thursday and into Friday, until finally, more from exhaustion than the realization of any goal, the anarchy burns itself out. Much of what happened here came about because the LAPD has a reputation for being too aggressive, for resorting too quickly to excessive force, especially in the city's black communities. The videotape of the Rodney King beating engraved on so many of our minds the grainy images of Los Angeles police officers mercilessly beating an apparently helpless man. A lot of very good officers have been tarred by that image. One can't help but conclude that much of the Los Angeles Police Department has become shell-shocked over the past year, and that on the day of the verdicts, if anything, they were gun-shy. It explains in one sense the ultimate irony, the LAPD being held to account for being too timid in trying to control a civil disturbance. There is, as we noted at the beginning of this program, blame enough to go around, although the police chief and the mayor, consumed by their rivalry and their distaste for one another, deserve special recognition. The Los Angeles riots of 1992 exposed as much as anything a lack of leadership. Not simply the leadership to contain the violence or to put down the riots, but a leadership that has inadequately addressed the deep-seated problems that confront this city and that exploded on the streets of Los Angeles. It remains only to be noted that the cost of the Los Angeles riots was terribly high. 60 dead now, 2,383 injured, 25,000 jobs temporarily lost, $735 million in damage, and worst of all, no reason to believe that it couldn't happen again.